for people who have chronic illness, I think we've all experienced trying to share with somebody and having them not respond in a way that's helpful. And that can really make
makes it worse.
And you can find yourself feeling so discouraged, but ever asking for help again or reaching out.
Live with both facts. The fact that I am so sick, don't have answers, there's no end in sight.
Yeah.
And the fact that God sees even the sparrow that falls.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really special video because I invited two wonderful friends to be on this video because we're going to talk about dealing with chronic illness. And both Natalie and Emily have or are dealing with chronic illness. And the reason I wanted to talk about this on my channel is because I have been doing like a health series talking about my health journey. And a while back, I did this poll on Instagram. How many of you deal with like a chronic health issue? And I was just surprised that this is so common. Like I did not realize that. So I hope today will be encouraging to you if you are going through a difficult time with your health. And I want to just preface that sometimes we think of chronic health issues as just being physical issues, but it also can be mental health issues. And for me, that's like my chronic health issue is anxiety. So maybe you're like, I don't think I deal with like a chronic health issue, but if you have anxiety or depression, that's an ongoing issue, then this will be encouragement to you as well. So before we get started, I just want you guys to get to know Natalie and Emily a little bit. So Emily, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm married to my husband, Aaron. We've been married for almost 8 years now. And we have 3 little boys who are 9, 6, and 4. And I'm currently doing my student teaching at a local high school and getting ready to start teaching in the fall, which is exciting.
That's awesome. What about you, Natalie?
My name is Natalie, and I have been married to my childhood best friend, Weston. We're going to have our 10th anniversary this year. And we have 3 kiddos, 7, they'll be 8 years old this year, twin boys. And a 5-year-old little girl, should be 5 in April. And I work as a digital content creator, so I do YouTube videos and stuff like that too.
Yeah, and we've collabed on a video, so probably a lot of you know Natalie just from us doing that motherhood.
And we've known each other for a very long time.
Yes,
so.
And if you guys have followed me for a while, Emily was on one of my podcasts when I was doing my podcast regularly, sharing about your experience being a teen mom, and I loved when we got to talk about that together. So both of you guys, we work together, but never like all together. This is so fun. It's like a girlfriend chat. So, so first I think it would be awesome for you guys to share a little bit about the chronic health issue you have dealt with or are dealing with. So do you want to go first?
Sure.
Natalie?
So I still have a lot to discover about the ins and outs of what I've dealt with, but the diagnoses that I've had so far is chronic abdominal migraine syndrome, which is actually really rare in adults. So it took the better part of a decade to actually get that diagnosis. And so you can kind of think of it as head migraines and how painful those are, but it's actually in
your stomach,
your abdomen. And it's very chronic, and anything will inflame it. And then that triggered something called cyclical vomiting syndrome, where for a certain period of time I would just be throwing up all the time, and then that would go away, and it was a cycle. That's what they call it, cyclical vomiting syndrome. And most recently I've actually discovered that it's very much due to food allergies, which is a very recent diagnosis for me, and having cut out certain things in my diet that I was actually like allergic to has really helped how often I get those flare-ups, because it used to be just like all the time. And so now my flare-ups happen mostly because of stress and hormones, not so much after I eat. So I'm thankful for a reprieve of that, because it was a very, very difficult season. I lost a ton of weight with what I was going through, but it's not over yet. And I definitely still deal with it, but taking it one day and 1 month at a time.
Yeah. What about you, Emily?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I feel like I still have a lot to discover, and I'm kind of still in the midst of seeking different diagnoses. Different things that I know I've had, though. I had something most people don't know of is called adenomyosis, which is kind of like the weird cousin of endometriosis.
Oh, okay.
And it just functions a little bit differently, but it produces a lot of the same symptoms, really excruciating pelvic pain and terrible cramping, things like that. But all of that and all the things that went with that led me to end up having a hysterectomy when I was 27. So that was not really in the cards or in the plan, but it was very much relieving for the symptoms I was having with that. On top of that, I have what they're assuming is probably just IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, and just really severe gut pain, and most recently some sort of like chronic fatigue syndrome, like feeling I'll be like totally fine in the morning, and then by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon I'm crawling into my bed and I'm there for about 18 hours, like just very exhausted, and just other little things, like in my musculoskeletal system and in my skin, and it's like a lot of just kind of weird little things that don't seem to be related to each other, but I know have to be related somehow. So
yeah. One thing I was thinking about when you guys were talking is something I've been learning on my health journey is how you have to be, and I remember my mom told me this, your own health advocate, because you can just get diagnosed with so many things, and it's all like IBS. To me, IBS is like, because they diagnosed me with that too. It's like, we don't know what's wrong with you, so we think
slap IBS on it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something I've been learning is like, you have to be like doing your own research, like learning for your own body, because going into appointment for 15 minutes, they don't know like all the stuff going on. But that's so like different than the way we've always been taught, like just go to the doctor, get the prescription, like deal with it. It's like, no, that doesn't always work.
No, it rarely works.
Yeah, it just puts like a Band-Aid on it. But yeah, thankfully we have so much more research and things done that you can like listen to a health podcast, read a book, like learn stuff. But it didn't used to be like that. So yeah. So I want to ask you guys, this is probably like going to be my favorite question, because it's something that I feel like dealing with chronic health issues, you can feel really like isolated and alone, and start feeling like, does God really like love me? Does he really see what I'm going through? And I just want to know if that has been something you have ever dealt with, like, and how, like, where did you go from there? How did you handle that? So Natalie, what do you...
Yeah, that was interesting what you said. Does God really love me? Because just the other night, one of my kids was not feeling well, and they were in the bathtub and just, not feeling well and crying. And they said, oh, does God even see me? Does he love me? Does he care about me? And it broke my heart, because I know exactly what they're feeling in that moment. And I feel like we all kind of go back to that childlike state when we are so desperate in pain. And the answer that I gave them was what I wish I had someone in the room with me to tell me when I was going through that and I was feeling that. And it's like, God sees you. He sees even the sparrow that falls. And I was saying, the way we feel has no bearing on the nature of God. So what we are feeling in the moment doesn't change who God is. Our circumstances might change how we feel about our life, because in the moment when I'm laying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. and I've been sick for the last 18 hours and I've had it and I can't do anymore, in that moment I feel like God doesn't care about me, but that doesn't actually mean it's true. And that's what I was trying to convey in, childlike terms. To my little one who was feeling sick. But I've absolutely felt that way, where it's like, how can I cope and live with both facts? The fact that I am so sick, don't have answers, there's no end in sight. And the fact that God sees even the sparrow that falls. And it's just, we live in a fallen world. And I just have to remind myself, like, that tug on my heart for things to be perfect is because we're not meant for here. We are meant for a different place. And it's also comforting to just sort of visualize, like, God is that person in the room with me, comforting me, like I was with my little one, slicking their hair back and saying soothing words. Like he's the comforter. So what about you, Emily?
I mean, I've definitely been there, and even just recently, like, as I've manage through some different things. And, you know, for me, I think it gets hard when I will feel well for a while and be like, okay, I think I'm making headway
over the valley of it.
Yeah, over like this is okay. I feel okay, and then I tank again, and I'm like, okay, well, God, why did you allow me to feel well for a while, and then now I feel sick again, and I think very much like what Natalie said, I think what I've had to remind myself over and over is that His faithfulness doesn't change, and He allows all things for our good and His glory. And for some reason, whether I get to understand it this side of heaven or not, He's allowed this trial in my life. And I can trust His goodness because I've seen Him be good. I've seen Him be good to me. I've seen Him be good to other people. I've seen Him be good to, you know, throughout His word to all of His people. And so in the moments where I feel really desperate and feel like I can't possibly imagine His goodness to me right now, I can go back and say, well, this is where I saw His faithfulness. This is where I saw Him show up. This is where I've seen Him be faithful to others. This is where He's faithful over and over in His word to His people when they were faithless, right? Reading through the Old Testament is really humbling and thinking like, okay, all these times that Israel was unfaithful over and over again, and God still showed up and was faithful to them. Like, and then it's a comfort to me too, when I do experience those doubts, and I repent of being being faithless myself, to be like, He comes back every time. Like He doesn't say like, oh, well, you doubted me, you're on your own now. Like,
strike you down with another chronic illness.
And so just knowing He just continues to show up, and He continues to be the faithful God that He's been for all of time.
Yeah. And I do feel like through trials, we get to know the heart of God more. It's like all the other things that we can get busy with and distract our time with kind of fades away, like when you're not feeling well or you're going through a trial. And that's when you realize like how much you need God. Like you always need God, but you experience that in a greater way. And
there's
I think
a sweetness, definitely, even in the midst of the pain.
I remember telling my oldest son, because it's funny, all three of my kids also have some sort of chronic thing that goes on. And my oldest son, he and I were having a conversation one time, and he was really kind of a similar conversation to what you were having with your kiddo. He's like, I just don't know if God loves me, and you know, I don't feel like He's near to me. And I was like, I told him about how when I was getting ready to have my hysterectomy, I'd been, you know, in a season of basically being bedridden for almost 6 months. Like I would go from my bed to the couch and strap a heating pad on, and then go back from my couch to the bed and put the heating pad back on in there. Like I could barely function. But I remember in the last week before I had my surgery, I remember praying and just asking God, like, please don't go far away from me if I feel better. Like I just want to feel close to You like I do right now. And I told that story to my son, right? I've experienced the sweetness of walking with the Lord in the valley. And then when you're on the mountain, like, I don't want to think I don't need You anymore. And so I told my son that story, and he was he was pretty shocked by that. When you're 9 and you can't really comprehend that, but
I can just picture his facial expressions. He's such a cute little.
He's so emotive in his face all the time.
Another thing I wanted to ask about was what part has community, like your family or friendships, played in you being able to cope with dealing with a chronic health issue? Because like I said, sometimes we feel isolated, we feel alone. So was there a point where maybe you wanted to be isolated, you didn't want to share with other people what was going on, or maybe just you can think of how certain people in your life, whether it was your spouse or someone, was a huge support to you? Emily, do you have any thoughts to share about that?
Yeah, so because this is something that I've walked through pretty much from the beginning of, I've walked through it for most of my life, but particularly in my marriage, is something that I've walked through pretty much since the beginning of our marriage. It has been a growing situation for me, but also for my husband. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about how I'm thankful for this trial over our whole marriage. It seems kind of silly to say trial, because it's really been, it's been a long season. It's not just an acute, couple months and then it's over. But it really has grown. It's grown my marriage. It's grown my husband in really incredible ways, and my kids, and it's allowed the people closest to me in my home to be really compassionate and have a different perspective on what chronic illness looks like and how to help somebody. And it gives them a unique perspective on how to help others and be compassionate and caring towards others. Also, I've been really blessed with some friends who really understand chronic illness, who've walked through it themselves, and they're able to in those moments where I'm in the dark and convinced that God doesn't love me, able to say, that's a lie.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. Here's how I'm going to help you, and be practical, like use practical things like meals and childcare and things like that to just really step in and be a blessing in my life. And then in the seasons when I'm feeling well, it inspires me to go out and be all those things for someone else too, because I know what it's like to be cared for when you're in the dark.
Yeah. What about you, Natalie?
Well, for me, I'm the sort of person that I want to do it all on my own.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the biggest ways I've grown through this season of chronic illness, which kind of like Emily, I've actually dealt with a lot of this chronic gut issues since I was a kid. I just didn't realize what was going on, and it became very acute after I started having kids. So for the last 8 years or so, I think hormones just exacerbated it, and it just became a lot. And I would feel like I have to do it all on my own. If something was good in my life, it was because I created it, and I had this very hedonistic self-reliance that it was very prideful. That I'm just gonna call it what it is. It's pride. And having to call upon people. I've called my mom so many times from my bathroom floor, I can't even tell you. I can't move, I am puking. Can you come get the kids? I mean, back when my kids were babies, and I'm like, they're in their playpen. I can't move. And thank goodness we chose to live so close to my parents. I'm so grateful for that, for lots of reasons, but in those moments it was such a blessing. And she would drop anything and just come to help and just hold the babies while I clean myself up and get it together, or she'd start dinner or whatever. And that happened a handful of times where it was like, I mean, most of the time I would try to trudge through, and I can't tell you how many times I refused to call my mom because it's like, I can do this. I can't live like this. I have to be self-reliant. I have to do this on my own. And it would have been better if I just swallowed my pride and called her. So it's taught me that you can ask for help in the moments that are good. Like, you don't have to wait until you're completely desperate and it's the last straw to say, hey, you know what, I could use a little bit of support here. Or to call upon a friend. And it doesn't have to be some big task or job. It can just be like, I actually need some emotional support. You want to come hang out? You know, like it's not just, so community around chronic illness or chronic pain is more than just the nuts and bolts of getting help. It's also, like what Emily was saying, people there to encourage and to uplift and to remind you of God's truth and to remind you of the reality of your life. And this is just a season. You can get through this. And going through that and being humble enough to seek it out and then to accept it when it's offered. And that was something huge that I went through.
And I feel like for me too, on the other side of it, for people who have chronic illness, I think we've all experienced trying to share with somebody and having them not respond in a way that's helpful. And that can really makes it worse. And you can find yourself feeling so discouraged but ever asking for help again or reaching out. I was talking to a friend about this week. Like, I don't know about you, but I've had days where I start feeling better and I'm almost afraid to tell anybody I feel better because you're just afraid that they're going to assume that you're better and that you're not going to need help anymore, or that they're not going to want to check in, or not going to want to help you, or not going to want to be there, or
think you were like exaggerating before because you're like, oh, you just said you're better, and then the next day you're not feeling good. Wait, you just said you're better.
Or that somehow because you're suddenly better, that you are now up for anything. And I actually unfortunately lost a close friendship because of my chronic illness, and it's just so sad because there was a lot of toxicity and gaslighting in the situation where they would make me question if I was really sick. I was like, well, I'm not questioning it at 2 a.m. when I'm on the floor throwing up. Like, I'm not questioning it then, but the aftermath of the fatigue that you feel after an episode where you're so wiped out from the 18 hours that you just spent in bed, the person who doesn't deal with that or doesn't have the compassion or the emotional maturity to accept you wherever you are on the journey of the chronic illness. And unfortunately, it was one of those situations where I was basically being told that I was lying about it, that I was being dramatic, and then I was questioned, like, well, you had a good day. Well, that means you're better. So let's go drive down to Seattle. Let's go do a play date. Let's go. I was like, you don't understand. I'm so weak from this. And I'm actually having to catch up from all the work that I missed, from the housework that I missed, from the time with my kids that I missed. I'm constantly playing catch up, which stresses me out, which makes a flare-up happen. And then once I'm in that flare-up moment and I'm hurting, now I'm being gaslit into thinking that it's not real. And it was just this horrible, horrible cycle. So it can, as much as like it's great to have community, what you were saying, there's that flip side where people just they just don't get it.
Yeah. And you almost feel like you have to walk into any conversation with somebody that you maybe don't know as well, or don't have as good of a connection with, or don't know what they've experienced, like with a level of caution. Like I'm very cautious about what I share with certain people, because like the real depths of it, and a lot of times it'll even be simple things like, well, God's got you, you're gonna be okay. And it's like, well, I know that, but that doesn't,
just the pat answers.
that doesn't help me. Like, and that's when, that's when I've been asked before, like, what can people do to encourage people who
I'm curious what you would say to
that. And I think just it really is just actually show up. Like, don't. I hate the question, what can I do to help you? It's like, because in the moment I have no idea. Like, I don't know how to answer that.
Like offer a specific thing.
Like say, hey, I'm running to the store and I want you to send me your grocery list. And like, or like if that's not something you can do, or you don't have time to say, hey, I'm gonna drop off a card at your house today. Or don't even say anything. Just like drop it off if you know where they are. Just really actually practically show up, because I know for me, like if I'm asked, it's really, it feels like really hard to ask for help, and I don't even really know what I want or what I need or what would be a blessing to me. But also I almost feel guilty for having this chronic illness that puts a burden on other people and makes them want to help me. And so then it's like, well, I don't want to ask for anything because you're already like having to reach out and ask me if I'm okay. And
I don't want our only point of contact to be you helping me.
I know.
Well,
totally.
I'm glad though that you brought up what you said, because I think that is the tendency if you're dealing with chronic illness, for it to feel like, oh, it's all about people helping me. But you said when you're feeling better, I think that's awesome, Emily, that you even are thinking that way. You try to reach out to your friends.
Well, I feel like chronic illness helps. If you're someone who goes through chronic illness, you know exactly what someone with chronic illness needs. So you can speak their language when they're in those moments. And now that I've gotten better and I have more time for extra things in my life, when I'm cooking dinner, I literally cook double, and I will freeze it. And then when someone, hey, I'm sick, or if I hear of something, I literally get it out for them. And that's not like, oh, look at me, I'm such a good friend. But it's
you wouldn't have thought of that before.
No,
if you hadn't dealt with it.
Because it's not, hey, what do you need? What can I do to help you? It's like literally, I'm swinging by. Can I grab the kids for an hour? Can I take them to the park? Or just opening my front door to a little bouquet that they picked from their own yard. It doesn't have to be grand gestures. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I will clean your entire house. It doesn't have to be huge things. It's really in those moments, the thought counts, but it's actually the physical help that counts a lot. And it's just having it happen and just doing it that really it goes such a long ways. It really does.
I want to just close with, if you can just think of one thing you would like to share with somebody, if they were in the room right now dealing with chronic health issues and really struggling, what's like the one truth or encouragement you would want them to hear?
I mean, I think I would just kind of go back to what Natalie said earlier when she shared what she said to her kiddo, that in the moment, like likely when you're struggling, it does feel like God doesn't see you. It feels like you're alone, and it feels like you're just on your own and you're isolated. And I would just say that no matter where you are, no matter whether you are, early on in your chronic illness journey and you're trying to figure out what's happening to your body, maybe you felt well for most of your life and all of a sudden something happens and you're just very sick out of nowhere, or this is something you've battled with your whole life and you're just fatigued from dealing with it over and over. But God sees you, like He sees you and He cares about you and He's working for you, and he's on your side. It's not ever that he's left you or that he's just leaving you to suffer. He's not just like over, you know, sitting up in, like you said, sitting up in his cloud, just watching you like, okay, you can just ride there on the floor by yourself. You're on your own. Like, it's not like that. He, whether you feel him near or not, he is near. His nearness is not subject, like you said, his nearness is not subject to our feelings or our experiences.
Yeah, and that's so key. Like, I just was thinking, I've thought so much recently about how us as women, we let our feelings lead how we choose to act and interpret a situation. And so that's why reminding ourselves of the truth of God's word is like so important. So
I actually wear this necklace that says near on it. And I started wearing this after my grandpa passed away, because the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and he saves the crushed in spirit. And that's another verse. And that would be my word of encouragement, is like you were saying, the Lord is near. Like he's here. Like it's not just that he's near and coming back, because I feel like sometimes it gets a little bit misinterpreted, but he is near. Like he's literally in the room. Like his presence is here. He left his Holy Spirit here to be with us. And that is such a comfort. And it's just something that I cling to in those moments, and just don't forget, like he's not just up on his cloud. I guess our encouragement is the same. Like I think that can be universal for anyone.
Oh, I love that. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I was encouraged.
Thank you for having
to share. So if anybody wants to find you on social media, I will leave. Emily, are you on? You're still on.
I'm still on. You can find me.
I'll link your Instagram, and I'll link your Instagram and your YouTube channel. I hope you guys were encouraged today. Please share this video with any other friend that maybe is going through a hard time, that needs this encouragement and reminder of God's love for them. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in my next video, and I'll probably have them back again. So thanks for watching. Bye guys.